This actually happened just recently, in the past month. At my boyfriend's house, there's this doll. The doll is very old, plastic, it's got short brown hair, it's really creepy. Half of its face is melted into its shoulder, so the look of it gives off a really weird vibe. Not even the look, but being around it, the energy is off. It's pretty tall, maybe like 3 feet or so. I didn't really pay attention to it the first couple times I went over in the last month. My boyfriend's mom actually found the doll in a storage unit. She goes through storage units. They found this doll wrapped up in a bag and decided to take it home with them. When I first picked up the doll, I actually felt kind of scared, but comfortable at the same time with it. I'm a very spiritual person, so I know something was attached to the doll. When I had left their house, I get a call from my boyfriend telling me it was moving around the house and ending up in weird places. He decided to mess around with the doll and threw it down the stairs, to which its leg fell off. Out popped a brown piece of paper. The message written on it was worn off from old age. I went over there a week after and brought the doll upstairs with us, to which the dog was up there and started barking and growling at the doll. But I felt uncomfortable with it and didn't want to let go of it for some reason. It felt like something came over me and I was attached to the doll and whatever was attached to the doll. My boyfriend started asking me why I was acting weird and told me to stop and give him the doll. I don't remember how I was acting because it felt like something took over. I kept telling him that Amy will get mad and that she likes me. That's where the doll got its name from. My boyfriend finally took the doll from me and put it in the opposite room from him. Through his vent, you can see the room it was in. The next morning, we woke up and the doll was staring right into his room from the vent. I swore to never pick that doll up again because whatever was attached to it wasn't good. Ever since then, I've been having dreams about demons and the doll. So a few years ago, the night sky was clear and my mom and I had gotten off work at about the same time, around 2 or 3 a.m. The moon looked beautiful. We decided to go out and watch the sunrise over the lake. We lived about 15 minutes from Lake Michigan, and it's pretty regular for us to talk for hours. We took a back road through a wooded area to get to our usual location. Some info you need to know about the location in order to imagine this. The road we took was a very small road that had thick woods and swamp on both sides. The road is so small that if cars were going both ways, sometimes you have to pull off slightly to the side to let the other car pass. Lots of greenery surrounds this road, and there are slight dips on either side. No streetlights or anything, so the only illumination is the car's headlights. Okay, so we're driving and chatting, and I'm in passenger, Mum's driving. As she's talking to me, I'm looking at her and she's looking at the road. She stops mid-sentence, and I could tell that something was happening in front, so I glanced over. I said, "What's a kid doing out here this late?" I saw what I can only describe as a creature that looked like it was made to blend in with its surroundings, that was standing on the left side of the road. It seemed to be made of twigs and leaves and branches, almost, but not quite, resembling a tumbleweed. It stood at most 3 foot tall. It seemed to be covered in patches of some sort of orange or copper or red fur, but not quite fur. As soon as the words left my mouth, I realised, that's not a kid. My mom shouted my thoughts and slammed on the brakes. If you've ever seen TV shows depicting the way vampires move, like super fast, almost glitching across, that's how this thing moved to get in front of us. It was on the left, then right in front of us in a split second. If I had to guess, we were maybe 7 feet away from it. It lifted its head. Its whole body was kind of one big mass, and it looked at us with its eye. Yeah, one eye. One completely black eye. We sat there in stunned silence for a moment. Just as I was asking, "What is that?" it got down and slithered, like a fucking snake, past the car and into the brush on my side. My mom took off at full speed. I'd researched a lot about how one person's thoughts and recollection of a situation can influence another person's until the story is no longer the same. There was even a study done about people who had never been on a hot air balloon, being shown a picture of one, being told that they were on it when the photo was taken, and asked to remember the day. Most people said that they remember it and make up a story about it. Really interesting stuff, absolutely worth looking into. So both of us knowing this prior to the event, I asked her what she saw, and she asked me what I saw. Both were the same. At first we tried to rationalise it as a tumbleweed, but no, it surely looked at us. Maybe a deformed animal, but no animal around here looks like tumbleweed. Maybe a really skinny deformed fox? Couldn't be, because the way it glitched across the road, it's the only way I know how to describe it. We then moved on to more paranormal creatures in our search engines. This proved fruitless, as nothing we could find matched the description of what we saw. When telling this story to friends, I often find myself referring to it as a realistic and nightmarish version of the Lorax. To this day, when recalling this incident, it feels like we saw something we weren't supposed to. Like we saw past what we all know as fact and real and tangible, and saw a part of what this world really is. The feeling doesn't make sense, and neither does this story. If anyone has any suggestions about what this could be, I'm open to answer any and all questions. I just want to know what we experienced, even if it's just an animal we never knew of. My son was 2 years old when all of this started. I was sitting in the living room on the couch watching my son play with his ball, and it rolled into the dining room. I looked at him and told him to go get it, and he started crying and said no, that there was a man in the dining room that was going to get him. As you could imagine, I jumped off the couch and ran to the dining room. There was no one there. Yet my son was crying, saying he was standing in the corner. I told him there was no man in the dining room. I grabbed his ball and we went back to the living room. I had forgotten all about that encounter until he was around 3 years old, and my twin sister and our friend were at my house. Our friend kept bugging my son, wanting to play hide and seek. She told him she was going to hide in our basement so that he couldn't find her. All of a sudden, in a different voice than he usually talked in, he pointed us at the basement door and told my friend, if she goes downstairs, the girl down there will kill her. I was shocked, for one because he had told her in a deep growling voice instead of his sweet baby voice. So I asked him who he was talking about, and he told me her name was Sarah. Then he went on to explain that Sarah was dead. I asked, how did she die? He then told me that she had died in a car wreck at the age of 16. She had been with her parents, they'd hit a tree, and then the car had went through a house. I couldn't believe what he just told us. A couple of days later, we went to eat at a Mexican restaurant. We went to the restroom before we left the restaurant. My son then told my twin sister not to go in the bathroom stall next to the one we were in, because Sarah was using that bathroom. My friend jokingly said, well, how did Sarah get there? My son told us she sat in between me and you in the back seats on the way up here. I thought maybe he just had a good imagination at his age. So a couple of months later, he grabbed my hand and told me, Mommy, come here, your friend wants to say hi to you. I went into his bedroom holding his hand. I asked, where is he? My son points and says, he's standing right there, Mommy. Then my son tells me, Jamie says to tell you not to be sad anymore. I asked him where he'd heard that from. My son says he is standing right there. That's what he told me to tell you. Jamie was my ex-boyfriend. We had dated in middle school and then again in high school. In high school, he'd been in a car wreck and had passed away. A couple of weeks later, we were going through old photo albums. My son points to a picture and says, I know that man. I asked, how do you know him? My son said he comes and talks to me. I then explained that the man couldn't talk to him because of a picture of my father-in-law, and he had passed away before me and his dad had gotten together. My son says, Mom, I do talk to him. He told me about taking Daddy for rides in his old Ford truck when Daddy was little. I asked my husband about it, and he confirmed that his dad had an old Ford truck, and they used to go riding in it. Then me and my husband were sitting in the living room a couple of weeks later, and we hear our son laughing and talking to someone. We both get up and walk into his room. I asked, who are you laughing at? He turns to us and says, I'm playing with Mama. My husband's mother had passed away when our son was 2 years old. I asked him what she was saying to him. He then threw his hand up and said, hey, his name. That was exactly what she used to do every time he walked in the room before she passed away. My husband had to be at work at 5 a.m. every morning, so I would always get up, make him breakfast, and make his lunch to take to work with him. He leaves for work, I'm sitting in the living room, and I see something in our bedroom. I get up to see what it is, and I see two girls standing in the mirror brushing their hair. I'm thinking, I'm just seeing things. So I rub my eyes, And nope, they're still standing there. After they notice that I'm looking at, they disappear. I ask my son what they wanted. He tells me that Sarah came for him and that she isn't leaving until she gets him. I was so scared after he told me that. The scary part is, my son was a healthy kid for the longest time. Then all of a sudden he started having stomach problems. The doctors have done all kinds of tests and can't find a reason for why he's sick. He's now 14 years old, and when he was 11, he started having seizures. Of course, doctors had done tests and couldn't figure out what was causing him to have seizures. They told us that usually one side of the brain triggers a seizure. Both, but sides of his brain show activity for the seizures. That being said, we moved out of the home we had been living in, and he got better. So I don't know if it was the house causing his illness, or whatever was in that house. Now we've moved back into the house we used to live in, and his stomach problems have come back. Me and my husband had split up for about 8 months. That's the reason we'd moved out of the house, and then moved back in. Strange things are happening again. For starters, my son's stomach problems have come back, and it seems to be worse now than the first time he had unexplained stomach problems. But anyways, we've been hearing strange things in the house. I'll be laying in bed at night and hear a man laughing. I will wake my son and husband up, and the laughter stops. Then me and my husband, neither of us smoke, and in certain parts of our house you can smell cigarette smoke really bad, as if someone is smoking right at that moment. And we have started to hear noises coming from our basement, and I'm sure I'm not going down there to see what the heck it is. Then last night we were getting ready for bed, and I was standing in my son's room. If you've read the first post, you know we have a door that is connected to our son's room, so that we can keep an eye on him because of the strange things that have happened. And my husband was standing in our room, and I asked him if he just saw our bed move, like someone had sat down on it and moved a little bit. He said yes, and started to look under the cover to make sure neither of our dogs had snuck under the cover while we weren't looking. But there were no dogs in the bed. I woke up twice last night to a man's laughing. It's 5:10 in the morning as I'm writing this. My husband has left for work and I'm wide awake because I'm scared to go back to bed. If anyone knows of any ways to help, please let me know. I was asking some of my family members what they had experienced in our house. My stepdaughter's experience. My stepdaughter lived with us from the ages 17 to 18, and she stayed in the room that our son stays in now. She told me one night she went to use the bathroom and shower, and she had a conversation with a woman that she thought was me. The door was shut, so she thought I was sitting on her bed talking to her, because whatever it was mimicked my voice, and she had a 20-minute conversation with whatever it was. Now, I remember this happening because me and my husband, her father, were in the living room with our son watching TV. I remember her coming in the living room and telling me it was rude to just walk off in the middle of our conversation. And me and my husband told her I hadn't got up on the couch at all since she went to her room. My husband's experience. This one happened when our son was around 3 to 4 years old. I had wrecked my car, so my mother had come and got me and my little boy. My husband had come home from work and he knew he was with my mother, but he came in and saw a woman that looked like me walk into our bedroom. He had a 3 or 4 minute conversation with her. He was in the living room. He lays his paperwork from work on a table in the living room, goes into our bedroom, and the woman he was talking to was gone. He goes back into the living room to call me, and the paperwork he had laid down was ripped into pieces. My older sister's experience. Her ex has custody of their daughter, and they live in Ohio. We live in Tennessee. He brought my niece down for the summer to let her stay at our house. My sister stayed here while she was here, and they stayed in our son's bedroom. My sister said she woke up to an eerie feeling and looked in the corner of the room, and the little girl that my son called Little Sarah, because she didn't know her name, was sitting in the corner squatting with her elbows on her knees and her hands propping up her face, just looking at my sister. My sister threw the covers over her head and started praying and said it felt like an eternity, but she peeked out of the covers and the little girl was gone. So she sat up in the bed to go to the bathroom. We have connecting doors from our rooms to our son's. She looked in the room where me and my son were sleeping. My husband worked night shift at the time. and the little girl was in the corner of our room squatting. Needless to say, she never went to the bathroom that night. She lay back down, threw the covers over her head, and didn't come out till daylight. Now this happened tonight. It's 4:45 a.m. and my son woke me up around 12. Something and said, "Mom, was that you just whispering to me?" I told him, "I've been asleep, I haven't whispered anything." When my husband gets up for work at 4 a.m, he has to be work at 5 a.m. My husband and my son both watched me pick my son's AirPods up off the floor and put them in his AirPod case. Our son lays back down till 4:25 and something wakes him up. And my son came in the living room and says, "Mom, where is my other AirPod? I watched you put both of them on my case." And we went in his bedroom to look, and it was laying on the floor and none of us had touched them since I stuck them back in their case when I woke up at 4 a.m. I never really grew up definitively believing in the paranormal, although I had a few strange encounters as a child. Waking up to the featureless grey figure in my doorway, for example, as well as what seemed to be an apparition of a man in a white robe walking on the beach at night while I gazed out of our condo room while on vacation, only to call my parents to come look, and he was gone not a moment later. Most were just explained as my eyes playing tricks on me, which I accepted. In college, in my dorm room, with a few friends just a room away, I heard a woman's voice whisper my name from the wall I was standing next to. It was well known a woman had been murdered in the building in the 80s, and many people had stories of encounters, but since no one else heard the voice, I chalked it up to being drunk. It wasn't up until a few years ago, I'm 28, that I didn't have an excuse for what I experienced. At the time, I was a waitress at a bar restaurant type spot. The first day I started, the woman who trained me warned the place was haunted by 3 spirits: an old man, a boy, and a woman. I listened politely as she explained the little boy followed her home and made quick friends with her young daughter, but I had serious doubts. Months later, I was in my room, getting ready to go out for the night, listening to music from my phone as my friend lounged on my bed. I had called off work that night, feeling like I needed a bit of a break. The carpet in my room is thick shag carpet, and you can bet that when you open and close the door to my room, it takes effort as there's no space between the two. As the music played low, I heard the creak of the door and whipped around, not expecting my parents to be home yet. My dog lay clueless and asleep at my feet, and no windows were open for a cross breeze. I looked at my friend on my bed, who was alert and no longer lost in her phone. I asked, "Did my door move?" It was completely still by the time I had turned around. "I think so," she replied, obviously not wanting to believe her own words. Okay, well, let's ignore that. 10 minutes later, I finished getting ready and get up to leave my room to go feed my dog before we leave. At this point, I turned off the music. Walking through the doorway, it felt like my lungs froze as I exhaled and immediately felt off. At that moment, from my left, a voice from the dark, empty bathroom beside me spoke. The voice was that of a woman and was muffled, to the point that I could only make out the last word, "You." I still felt the breath caught in my throat as I turned around to see my friend in my room on my bed with a horrified look on her face. "Did you say something?" I asked her, praying she would say yes. "No, I thought you did." Needless to say, I grabbed my dog and we ran out of the house. When I brought this up at work, the owner who lived above the bar and who had been out of town mentioned how it had been quiet and not busy with the usual paranormal activity since she returned. "So that's where Rebecca went," she mused. That night, I politely asked Rebecca to go home and haven't heard her since, but still don't know what she said to me. From the outside, it seems to be some average, nondescript house. The kind of place that you'd likely find in any city or small town. It's not, though. This house is like something out of the Twilight Zone or a Stephen King novel. You see, I lived in this house when I was 11 or 12 years old. That was 93, 94. My room was the one above the porch with the double window. My sister's room was across the hall. My mother and my brothers lived downstairs. During the time we lived there, strange things occurred. Some of them you may find hard to believe, and that's okay. I can only assure you that they actually happened. Some 26 years after the fact, I can provide you no evidence and my only solemn word that everything I'm about to tell you is the absolute truth. For starters, sometimes our clocks would run backwards for no discernible reason. We changed the batteries and checked them for defects, but nothing seemed to be amiss. They just randomly started running in reverse from time to time. There was also an issue with our basements. How do I describe this? I guess the best way would be to say the basement seems to be on a portal to hell. We would hear strange noises coming from down there that wouldn't be explained away as creaking pipes or the house setting on the foundation. Things like demonic growling, roaring. When someone had to go down there to do laundry, there was a sound like someone whispering and the whole area had an unsettling feel to it. We had this dog, a German Shepherd named Lassie. She was an exceptionally brave, loyal and protective dog, but she would not go near the basement or the basement door. Eventually, she became so terrified that she ran away and never came back. There was also a night when we all woke up to find a big black crow, or raven, I'm not sure, in the house, flying madly around. This has been the ungodly hours of the morning, mind you, so no one would have been up to open the door or window to let it in. If you can even imagine an intelligent bird like a crow or raven willingly flying through an opening into a human dwelling like some kind of idiotic sparrow. There were no holes in the roof and no place for it to get out. Where did it come from and where did it go? I have no memory of us actually getting the bird out of the house, but I never saw it again. Then there was the man. At the back of the house there was a hallway that led off the dining room and past the kitchen towards the lower floor bedrooms. The twins, mere toddlers at the time, had their nursery in the foremost room on the left. They would sit back there and have conversations with someone that none of us could see. They referred to this person as simply the man. The man seemed to enjoy keeping the boys company, but he was anything but benign. One day, while the rest of us were at school, my mum had the twins in their high chairs, feeding them lunch. When she stepped away to do something, get something from the kitchen or answer the phone, don't remember, there was a crash and the sound of screaming. One of the twins that was on the floor was highly tipped over. He'd bashed his head really bad. The high chairs had been secured on the footing before she started. When she asked the other twin what happened, he replied, "The man did it." My little brother ended up in the hospital in a coma for a long time. You might be happy to know that he survived and today is married with 2 beautiful daughters. But CPS didn't believe that my mother was innocent and began to stalk us. They would park across the street from our house and watch us. They would drop in unexpectedly. They were looking for a reason to take us and put us in the foster care. This is how we ultimately ended up leaving the house. Rather than deal with any more tragedy or weirdness or stalking, we packed up what we could and moved across the country. What we couldn't take with us, we left behind. I asked my mother once, about 5 years before she died, if she'd ever actually seen the entity that the boys referred to as the man. She said she had, but only once. She said she was walking past the kitchen door one day and had caught sight of someone in her peripheral vision. A tall man wearing dark clothes, standing with pink hair to the side, staring out of the kitchen window. When she turned to get a better look, he was gone. That house scared the crap out of all of us. There was always a feeling like we were being watched. Thankfully, it's many years and many miles behind us. When we left, there was no one to pay the mortgage, so the bank took repossession. Because of this, today it's privately owned by people I don't even know. For that reason, I will not disclose the location. I won't even tell you what state it's in. If you've ever been unfortunate enough to stumble upon it, however, I advise you to keep walking. Don't stop to look back, because if you stop to look at a picture, there's something likely that will happen to you taking a knee. I live in a small condo or apartment. It's about 500 square foot, and it has no shady history. It was built in the 80s. We knew who the last owners were, and they owned it for a decade and are definitely still alive. We've been here for almost 4 years. It's just me and my husband. Husband and I were getting ready for bed. I was out for a smoke, so he did his teeth and all that before me, and got into bed maybe 5 minutes or less before I got inside from the porch. You can see the door to the bathroom from the kitchen, but it's partially blocked off by a half wall, separating the kitchen from the entrance hall and then the bathroom at the other side. So I walked to the sink to grab some water. I saw a figurehead into the washroom and then heard what sounded close to dry heaving, like that gurgle backwash sound that someone makes when they might puke but haven't quite done it yet. The door to the bathroom was still open, but I couldn't see the toilet from where I'm standing. Knowing my husband is fairly private for that stuff, I stood there for a moment and listened. I heard more gurgling and dry heaving. He didn't come out, so I slowly crept up to the door to ask if he was okay, while still trying to maintain his privacy by not seeing the toilet. He replied from the bathroom, down the hall. He asked me to repeat what I said because he hadn't quite heard me. Confused, I went fully into the bathroom and there was no one there. I would just chalk up to the toilet or shower making noises, but I definitely thought I saw someone walk in there, and then the noises happened for a good half a minute after. So I'm feeling like I'm losing my mind. My name is Agnaldo Alreiroz. I'm 44 years old and I live in Brazil. I'm new to Reddit, and this is my first post. I apologise in advance for my limited English. I would like to share my story and have your opinion. When I was 20 years old, the year was 1996. A couple friends of my mother lost their home, and as Brazil was going through a very severe economic crisis at the time, and my mother seeing the situation of the couple, she invited them to temporarily live in our house. They slept in the living room, on a mattress, and the guy was an alcoholic. He often fought with his wife. When he came home from the street, tired from work, he was always a person very nasty and grumpy, and always drunk. My brothers and I kept some distance from him to avoid getting upset, but this guy always harassed us and said bad things, which hurt us. A few days later, we convinced our mother to send this couple away, but they just left because he and his wife stole money from my mother. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been kicked out of our house. So on the day they left home, this couple stayed outside the house in the car, packing their bags. And my brother and I, we went in and out of the house with their bags, and they were packing in the car. It so happens that there was no one in the house, except me, my brother, and the couple who were on the street, in the car. There was an old stereo in our house, which was ours, in the back room. And when we were on the street, together with the couple, delivering another batch of bags, this sound turned into a rock, very high. The four of us on the street looked at each other in amazement, and we commented, how can this happen? Since there was no one in the background. It was just the four of us, and we were on the streets at the gate. Then we entered the house, and I myself not only turned off the stereo using the power off button, but I also unplugged it, because I was very scared. We took the last bags, and again in the streets, the sound turned on the same song, for the second time, very loud. Well, I turned it off myself. I unplugged the power cord. That's unbelievable. We dropped the bags on the floor with the couple and ran to see how this happened. And to our surprise, in addition to the sound being turned on, the wire was plugged into the socket. Well, I'm a skeptical person and I'm not mystic, but I can't deny what I saw that afternoon. And really, I can't explain how it happened. I can assure you there was no one in the house but the four of us, and both times the stereo turned on itself. And it's a mystery. I can't solve it inside my head, as I've already thought about it, but it's inconclusive. The witnesses in the case directly are me and my brother, and the couple who testified indirectly that day. This happened about 3 years back now. My friend and I were 15 and 14 at the time, me being the older one. In 2019, my friend, who I will call Nim, was house-sitting a friend's dogs. The family lived in the country, and most cars we saw drive by there were less than 5. Nim was staying the week watching 4 labs. He knew the house was haunted because they'd hear the occasional footsteps on the stairs, or the dogs would start barking at the staircase and be too scared to go up them. They spent the first night along, the next 3 nights with our other friend. The friend got too freaked out because they started seeing people staring at them through the windows, while outside, or they'd hear laughter and talking upstairs. The friend left, and Nim invited me to stay the last 3 days with them. Nim told me the house was haunted and everything that had happened. I'd never had any bad experience with the paranormal before, so I wasn't really worried. We were sleeping in the living room, and the first night, nothing really went on. The second night, we heard footsteps go up the stairs, and sometimes we heard someone talking, but neither of us really minded. We both have always been believers, and neither of us wanted to upset any spirits that were possibly there, so we didn't talk about it. The third night was when shit hit the fan. Nim's dad had ordered us pizza, and we sat on the road while eating it. Nim had sent me inside to get something, maybe cups. I went straight to the kitchen and went back out. To get to the kitchen, we had to pass by the living room, but we wouldn't have been anywhere near the windows. When I went back out, Nim asked if I sat on the couch and looked at them through the window. I simply told them no, and we shrugged it off and continued eating. Nim had gone inside because neither of us remembered to grab napkins. I'm generally the protective friend, so I watched Nim go in case they got too freaked out or in case they tripped. I looked at the same window they saw me in, and I saw them looking at me as well. When Nim came out, I asked if they did what I did, and they said no. I went to the bathroom first, then grabbed the napkins, and then came straight out. The bathroom was in the kitchen. Fast forward, we go inside, and Nim was fast asleep on the couch. It was an L shape, so it was fairly big. I had 3 of the labs with me, one by my head, another by my feet, and another on the floor next to me. It was past midnight, and I was scrolling through my phone. I heard the youngest lab next to me growling at the arched doorway, and when I looked, he was stood up and staring at the doorway. The one at my feet was stood up on the couch, but not growling, while the one by my head was still laying down. He was looking at the doorway like the other 2. I didn't care too much as I had heard footsteps running up the stairs and giggling all night, so I thought they were growling at the stairs. I only actually looked at the doorway when the oldest by my head had climbed over my legs and was growling. I turned off my phone and sat up. When I looked where they were, I saw a black figure standing there. There was enough shining in the dining room to outline the figure. Of course, I panicked a bit, because it just supposed to be Nim and I. I didn't move from the spot even when the thing looked at me. I don't know how long I held eye contact with it. All I knew was I was too scared to move from my spot. I felt like I was paralysed. The 3 dogs by me had all stood up and were staring at the figure. 2 were growling and 1 was whimpering. I didn't realise it was walking towards me until it got to the door frame. That's when I finally moved and jumped over to Nim and woke them up. The 4th dog woke up since they were cuddling with Nim, and the other 3 still looked angry or upset at the doorway. I tried telling Nim what happened and even played out to them what I saw. I don't know if they believed me, but I'm sure me having a panic attack and almost crying from fear was convincing enough. Nim stayed up with me and I didn't sleep until I got back home. I don't think I've ever been so happy to leave a place.